welcome back. Today we're doing another Shop My Stash where we talk about the products that I'm going to be using this week. And if you stick around for a little bit, I'm also going to recap the past 2 weeks that I've done Shop My Stash as well. I also filmed a video today mixing all my foundations. So for foundation this week, that's what I'm going to be using. I mix it together in the empty moisturizer jar that I had, and there's a lot in here because I have a lot of foundations, so I'm definitely not wasting it, and I'm going to be using this baby for the week and maybe more than that too. So because I'm only using one foundation throughout the week, I thought this would be a good opportunity to use several different primers with the same foundation. So the ones that I've been using the past couple of weeks were the Brandt Pores No More primer and the Estee Lauder the Mattifier primer. And I'm adding to that the Neutrogena Shine Control primer, the Becca Velvet Blurring primer, and the Soap & Glory One Heck of a Blot primer. And this one is one of my favorites. It's just a really good standard primer that's not too silicone-y and actually does have some oil control to it. So I really enjoyed this one, but I want to see how the foundation wears with this guy. The rest of my face products that I'm going to be using this week are all actually minis right here. So we have the Nars Goulue, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. If you know how to pronounce this, please let me know. I'm going to call it Goulue blush. And this was a blush that I got, I think this was a birthday gift from Sephora last year, maybe. And it's really pretty, I just don't use it very much, so that's in the rotation this week. And then we also have another mini from Nars. This is the Laguna bronzer, and as you can see, I've actually put a really good dent in this one. I just stepped away from using this for a long time, and I'm kind of reacquainting myself with that one. And then I also have the Hourglass Ambient Lighting Bronzer, and this is in the shade Diffused Bronze Light. And this has a little bit more shimmer than is ideal for me, but that's why I got a mini, so that I could test it out. And then maybe even the cutest one of all is this little Becca Shimmering Skin Perfector pressed, and this is in the shade Vanilla Quartz. It's almost like their color Pearl, but a little bit less stark. It has a little bit more of a gold shift to it. And then for eyeshadow, I dug out my original Lorac Pro palette. And the reason that I never used this a whole lot is because I just find it to be kind of boring, and I have... Alright, I got eyeshadow over my pants, but the palette's fine. So I find the color selection to be kind of boring, and when I was needing just really staple shades, I would just reach for other palettes. But there is a lot of versatility here, and I'm determined to get a lot of variety out of this palette this week, and it's the only one that I'm using this week. And then the lipstick portion of Shop My Stash wasn't really working out because I had a hard time deciding what colors at the beginning of the week were going to match all my outfits and my eyeshadow looks throughout the week. So I'm not specifically shopping my stash for lip products every week, but I am going to try to make more of an effort to dig a little bit deeper into the collection to grab some that I wouldn't normally grab out. And now we're going to recap the past 2 weeks that I've been shopping my stash. So I did film a Shop My Stash video last week, and all the footage came over without any audio, and I just didn't have time to refilm it, so that's why we didn't actually see one from last week, but it did happen, and I'm going to go through the products that I used. So I'm just going to combine both weeks together and separate it out by category. First, these are the two primers that I was using, the Brandt Pores No More and Estee Lauder the Mattifier. I find these both to be mediocre. This one does do a little pore smoothing, so I appreciate that. This one I feel like it does pretty much nothing for my skin. I don't feel like the oil control is very good, so I don't think I would repurchase either of these, but you know, they're not god-awful, so I'm going to use them until they're gone. Now let's talk about all the foundations that I've been using this week. So I always mix my foundations. I don't even remember the last time that I wore a single foundation on its own because I can just never find the right color for me. So that's why I mix them. I would say about half my foundations are a little bit too dark for me, and the other half are just about right or a little bit too light. And so the dark foundations that I was mixing in the past 2 weeks were the Laura Mercier Flawless Fusion Foundation. I have mine in the shade 1C1 Shell. And then the Tarte Amazonian Clay Foundation, mine's in the shade Ivory. And then the Soap & Glory One Heck of a Blot Foundation in the shade Fair Enough. There are only 4 shades of this foundation, so really, really bad shade selection, and the lightest shade is quite a bit darker than my skin, so that's why this gets mixed. And then the lighter foundations that I was mixing into those were the Maybelline Superstay, and mine is in the shade 102 Fair Porcelain, and the Lancome Tint Idole Foundation in 0N0 Ivory Neutral, and the DermaBlend Flawless Creator Drops, mine are in 0N, and the Fenty Beauty Foundation in the shade 110. So I tried out a bunch of different combinations of these foundations, and I have to say this Maybelline foundation is really emerging as a winner here. So when I paired it together with the Laura Mercier foundation and when I paired it together with the Tarte foundation, I had pretty good oil control days. It seems that really neither the Soap & Glory foundation nor the Fenty foundation really do a whole lot to help with oil control. But since I do have so many foundations and so many possible combinations, I now have a spreadsheet where I can record what I think of every combination that I do. So I'll get more into detail someday about how all these foundation mixtures work. All right, next we're going to talk about other face products. The Wet n Wild Contouring Palette in the shade Dulce de Leche, and this is the shade that I was using to contour with, and this works totally fine. This is a good powder. I have no problems with it. And then I also did use the Benefit Hoola bronzer as my bronzer. This was the first week that I used this one. But then in the second week, I was actually using my Benefit Cheek Parade palette. And that week, I was actually, this is the Hoola that's in there. And I feel like this one is slightly different than the one that's in the individual box. So during the second week, I was using this Hoola as my contour and then the Hoola Light as my bronzer. For blushes this past week, I was using the 3 that are in here. So this is Dandelion, California, and Rockateur, and this is a really nice face palette. I don't have any problems with any of these products, and I think it's handy to have them all together. The only thing that would make it even better is if they threw a highlight in there. There's an empty spot for where the brush goes, and I don't use the brush, so I just took it out, but wouldn't it be cool if there was a highlight there, you know? And then the first week I was using Nars Orgasm Blush, and I really rediscovered why I liked this in the first place. So I thought that I didn't like shimmery blushes and that's why I stopped using this, but when I use this, it really is beautiful. So I'm definitely going to use this until it's gone. And then I actually also have a mini of this too. So I have lots of orgasm to go around. The other blush that I tried to use during that first week was the Milani Luminoso blush. And I did use it one day, but I ended up topping it with the Orgasm blush because it's just too peachy. I just don't think it looks good on my skin. So probably gonna be letting this go. Now let's talk about the Hourglass Ambient Lighting Palette. I have had such a hard time with this. So this shade over here has the least shimmer in it, and I know people use these powders to set under their eyes or even their whole face, and I tried using this to set under my eyes and it was so dark, and it's extremely dark under my eyes when it's concentrated like that, so it definitely doesn't work for that. And then these other two, they're not extraordinarily shimmery, but they do have shimmer to them, and there's no way that I would set my whole face with these because I do have very oily skin and I don't need any more additional shine. So I have mixed them all together and used that as a highlight. It does work for that purpose. It's just a subtle highlight. But the thing is, to get a subtle highlight, I feel like the Essence Pure Nude highlighter does the same thing, if not a little bit better, and this is less than $5. So this is a highlighter that I've rediscovered and absolutely love in my collection. This is beautiful. So I'm so glad that I forced myself to use this because I remembered that I actually loved this. I also used I have a mini here of the Too Faced Candlelight Glow in Rosy Glow. And this was a perfectly good highlighter. I have no complaints. It's not like my favorite highlighter, but you know, it has a good neutral undertone. It does the job. It's a little bit more subtle. But I'll use it till it's gone. I don't think I'd purchase a full size, but I'll definitely use this up. And then the last highlighter, this is the one I used last week, was the JCat You Glow Girl highlighter in the shade Bella Rose. And you can see this is obviously a pale pink color. This is definitely a high impact highlighter, so I would recommend going in with a light hand and really buffing it into the skin so it's not too stark. I would also say that this one is not my favorite highlighter, but definitely worth keeping around. I enjoy it enough to keep using it. And now we're going to talk about the eyeshadow palettes that I used for the past few weeks. So the first week that I shopped my stash, I used the Tarte Sex Kitten eyeshadow palette as well as the Pretty Vulgar Pretty Birdie palette. And the reason that I chose these two to go together was because the Sex Kitten has some more neutral shades and definitely cooler tones in here, whereas the Pretty Birdie palette obviously has a lot more bright colors, and the mattes that you do have to work with are definitely a little bit warmer. So I thought that these two would go together nicely. And I have to say I wasn't extremely impressed with either of these. So I've said this before, but I'll go over it again. This shade in the Tarte palette is so glittery. And then this pink shade over here is really pretty, but it's a matte that they threw some glitter into. So I find it difficult to use because of the glitter that's in there. I just had a hard time getting a ton of use out of this one. So this one I would say is still on the chopping block, even though I really love the packaging. We all know I got it for the name of the palette, but this one's still not safe. And then for the Pretty Birdie palette, I was able to wear most of these shades throughout the week. Mattes work well enough, and the shimmers go on really pretty. They're really vibrant in the pan, they're vibrant when you put them on the eyes, but they fade pretty quickly. So they definitely do not last the full day. So not extremely impressed with this one, but I would say of the two, this is probably a little bit more safe than the Tarte one. And then last week, I was using the Too Faced Chocolate Bar and the Too Faced Sweet Peach palettes. Again, I like to give myself options since the Sweet Peach has a lot of warmer colors in it and the Chocolate Bar has some warm and some cool tones in it. I just wanted to be able to match anything that I needed to. The reason that I like the Chocolate Bar palettes is because, number one, they smell good. I like the packaging, and I like a lot of these colors. However, this milk chocolate and semi-sweet kind of end up looking the same when you blend them out as a transition or a crease shade. And then Triple Fudge is really the only deep shade in here. I find that Cherry Cordial does sheer out quite a bit from the way it looks in here, plus there's some micro glitters in here. So Triple Fudge is the only, you know, deep matte shade that you really have, and so since it's a little bit on the cooler side, then that really kind of limits your options as to what you can do with this. And then these two shades, Hazelnut and Hot Chocolate, get it, are very similar on the eyes, and then you do have a nice gold here, and my favorite shade is this one right here, this Marzipan shade. You've got the matte cream, you've got also a nice more pink toned highlighter over here, but I find these two shades to be pretty much unusable because they're packed with glitter, and the same thing with Gilded Ganache over here. So even though you look at this and it looks like there's a lot going on, I just have a hard time getting a lot of variety out of this palette. So I would say this is actually still on the chopping block. I will say I had a better experience this week with the Sweet Peach palette. So obviously there's a lot of warm tone shades going on in here, but if you look at some of these shades over here, these definitely lean in a cooler direction. So one of my looks last week, I used this kind of medium brown shade called Charmed, I'm sure, in the crease, and then I used this purple Delectable kind of on the outer portion of the eye, and that came out really, really pretty. I was wearing a shirt that was cool toned and it definitely worked just fine with that. And so I think that even though overall this is a pretty warm palette, there is a little bit of variety going on in here. But my point is that I did really actually enjoy this week, and so I think the Sweet Peach is safe. So that was a lot of stash shopping. Hope you enjoyed today's video, and I will see you next time. Bye.